In this video, you're going to apply what you learned in the previous video about Git using the command line. So basically, you're going to create a project, make some changes inside the project, and manage the versions of that project using Git. So let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to create a folder and call it project. Now I'm going to go inside this folder, and if I do ls, my folder is empty at the moment. Now let's open this folder using brackets. So we need to go back to the desktop and then type brackets, the name of the folder. So now here is our folder and it's empty at the moment. So first of all, we need to initialize a Git repository inside our folder. So we need to go inside the folder and then use the command git init. So this will initialize an empty Git repository for us. And you will find a folder called .git inside your repository. So if I try ls, I don't see anything because that folder is hidden. So I need to use ls-a to see the hidden content. And here is our folder right there. Now, if you want, you can go to that folder and explore its content. And here are the different files that Git will need to manage the different versions of your project. So now let's go back to our project folder and let's start making some changes inside. So I'm going to create our first file and call it file1.txt. So here is our file. Now, without making any changes, I'm going to make a commit. So first of all, let's do git status. And you can see that we've got one file that is not tracked. So let's track this file by adding it to the staging area. So git add the name of our file. So if I try git status now, then I can see one file there, and that's a new file. And that's the modification we've got at the moment. We added a new file. So now if I commit, so the syntax is get and then commit, and then you use -m to add a message to your commit. So I'm going to say created file1.txt. All right. So now you can see the details of our commit. So one file changed, and we've got a creation of that file. So now if you want, you can check the history of your commits by using the command git log. Now you can see all the commits that you've done so far. We've got only one commit at the moment, and this is the one. So for each commit, you're going to have a hash like that, which identifies your commit. Now you can read there head arrow master. So this means that we are currently in the master branch of the project, and the head is normally referring to which branch we are working on. So at the moment, we can say that Git is pointing to the master branch, or the head is pointing to the master branch in our project. Now, you can create more branches if you like. That's something we're going to do later. But for now, just remember that we are inside one branch, and that's our master branch. So the default branch is the master branch, and that's where we are pointing. So now let's make a few changes to our file. So I'm going to add line 1, line 2, and line 3. And then let's make another commit. So first of all, we need to add our file to the staging area, so git add, and you can use the name of the file. Now, if you want to add everything inside your projects, you can just use a dot like this. So this means that you want to stage everything inside the project. So now if I try git status, then I can see that we've got one modification of one file. Now let's commit and just say in the message that we have just modified file1.txt or added 3 lines to file1.txt. So here we go, we've got 3 insertions inside our file. Now if you try git log, then you will see that now we've got 2 commits and we are at the moment right there. And that's our latest commit. All right. Now let's create another file, file2.txt, and make a change to file1.txt. So I'm going to change this line. So now let's have a look at some useful Git commands. So let's say that you would like to visualize the difference or the differences between the current state of file1.txt and the state of that file when it was last committed. So to do that, you can use the command git diff followed by the path of your file. So in our case, file1.txt. And this will show you what changed between the moment you committed that file and right now. So here we go. So we can see that you replaced the content of the third line with some new content. And that's exactly what happened in our file. Now let's say that you made these changes and you're not happy with them at all, and you'd like to revert to the old state when you last committed, and you want to do that only for file1.txt. So the command you can use here is called git checkout followed by the path of your file. So we are interested in file1.txt only. So what's going to happen now is that we're going to revert to the old state of file1.txt when it was last committed. So let's try this. And here we go. That's how our file looked like when we last committed. So we've got our content back. Now, what if I make those changes that I'm not happy with, for example, and let's make a change to file2 as well. And let's say that we committed these changes. So let's stage our files and let's commit with a message created file2.txt and changed line 3 in file1.txt. So if we go to our history, then we can see our new commit there, and we're not happy at all with these changes. So if we try git checkout applied to that file, then it's not going to help because it will take us to this state when we last committed, and that's exactly that. So we need to find an alternative because we want a different version of our project. For example, that one or that one. To do that, we need to revert to an old commit. So let's have a look at this example and understand how this works. So let's say that we've got our Git repository and we're working in the master branch. This is our case. And let's say that we're making commits after changes. So we've got, for example, 4 commits. And this is our working environment. Now, what we're going to do, we are at this stage and we are not happy with the content of one of our files. So we want to revert to one of these commits. So let's say that we want to revert to that snapshot, number 3. So at the moment, we used that commit and we made some further changes. So if I go back to our projects, let's say that I added another line 4, and then realized that I'm not happy with that content. And I would like to revert to an old commit. So the current state of the project is the commit state plus some other changes. In our case, we added a new line to file1.txt. All right. So at the moment, this is the commit where our head is pointing. So what we want to do, we want to use an old commit. So let's say commit number 3. So we're going to move the head to that commit like that. And then we are going to change the content of our Git or our working environment to the content of that old commit, like this. So now the content of our working environment matches the content of that old commit. So this is the first step. So let's go ahead and do this. So the command we need to use here is called git reset, right, like this. And then we're going to use an option called hard. So when you use the option hard, this means that your working environment is going to be reset to whatever state you're going to specify here. So to specify which commit you want to revert to, you need to use the hash of that commit. So for example, in our case, let's say that we want to go back to that commit. So I'm going to use that hash like this. So let's keep a close look at the content of our files. So here we go. I missed one hyphen before hard. So let's try this again. Here we go. So now we can see that the content of our file has now changed to the state of that commit. And if you remember, we didn't have a file2.txt at that stage. So we changed the whole working environment to the state of that commit. So now if you check the history of your commits, git log, you'll see that we are at the moment pointing to that commit which we have just reverted to. But we need to be careful. We just reverted the content of our working environment to the state of that commit. But we still have the whole history of our commits. We didn't add a new commit to our project. We have just pointed the head to that commit at the moment. Now we've got a problem. We are pointing the head to this old commit, but we would like to point the head to our latest commit, but keep the content of the old commit, just like this. So how can we do this? Well, we need to use the command git reset again, but this time instead of hard, we're going to use the option soft. So soft will make it possible to move the head to another commit, which is the latest commit, without changing the content of our working environment. So this content will stay the same. So now we need to specify that we want to move to the previous commit. And to do this, we're going to specify head at 1. And this will take us to the latest commit without changing this content. So let's go ahead and do this. Here we go. So now if I try git log again, I can see that I'm pointing now to the latest commit, whereas I was pointing to that commit when I tried git log before running the command. All right, so now we are pointing to the right commit and we are ready to commit our changes. So let's go ahead and do this. So git add to stage all files, and git commit with a message reverted to commits using this hash. So now if we check git log, we can see now 4 commits, and the last commit is the one when we reverted to that commit. So the advantage of using this method is that we kept all our previous commits, we didn't destroy anything. So if you change your mind later on about this commit, which you reverted to the old commit, then you can always revert to that commit using the same method. And that's why this method is really safe. Now, if you want, you can carry on your changes in your working environment. So for example, you can delete that line, you can create another file, file3.txt, add one line to it, and so on. And you can stage your files again and make a new commit. Here we go. So now if I check git log, we've got another commit, and now we have got 5 commits in total. Here we go. So to quit that, I'm just going to write :q, and here we go. Alright, in the next video, you're going to get introduced to the concept of branching in Git.